e te whānau, the diversity of our wāhine, our Indigenous women presenting to us today, gathering today, is immense, and we continue on the energy of rangahau, the energy of our pūtaiao, with our next speaker, e te whānau. Before we go to our next speaker, Vanessa, I also just acknowledge our kairaranga who continue to do the mahi and continue to hold the Māori of tēnei kōrero, he Muka Tangata, he mana wāhine, ka kite ia kōrua e mihi ana ki a kōrua hoki. To our next speaker. Vanessa is the Pouhere Kanapu, Executive Director of Kanapu, and it's a 6-year program under the korowai of Ngā Pae o Te Māramatanga e mihi ana ki Ngā Pae, and funded by MBIE. She's more than what you can read on the screen, he te wānau. She's a tangata, a wāhine pupuru i ngā tikanga o tōna whānau o te puaha waikato, e mihi ana ki a koe e te maraikura e Vanessa, kei a koe te wā.
Tēnā tātou. He honore, he kororia ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa, pai mārire. Ai, ko te mihi ka tika ki tō tātou kingi, tūheitia potatau te wherowhero, te tuawhitu, te makawariki, a atawhai, me te whare kāhui ariki tōnu, pai mārire, kia rātou. Kia rātou, kua whetu rangitia, moi mai rā. Kia tātou te hunga ora, mā runga tēnei hui topa, tēnei ka mihi. Huri tēnei no te puaha o Waikato, Ngāti Tipa, Ngāti Tahinga, me Ngāti Amuru Apu. Ko Vanessa Clark tōku ingoa. I am honoured to join in weaving the voices of our Indigenous women today. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm really especially proud to be here and supported to speak to this kaupapa with the support of Te Rōpū Wāhine Māori Tuku i Te Ora and International Indigenous Women's Forum. Our global sisters, oh my gosh, we have heard you today, loud and clear. I have heard you, I hear you, I see you. Kia ora koutou. I am also very aware I'm standing between us and the lunch break. So firstly, I will say, I will try and keep to time so that we may also go and indulge in a little bit of a break, some water, food, to keep our sustenance for the rest of the afternoon. So tēnei te mihi kia koutou, hinerangi, thank you for your warm words. I'll go and share my screen now, and hopefully we can speak to the kaupapa of an Indigenous framework, an Indigenous Atua framework for research. Hinerangi has also mentioned a little bit about Kanapu, and I thought I would share just a little bit more information about our kaupapa Kanapu, through which we have developed this Indigenous Atua framework for research, He Kura no Te Ao Atua. Yes, we are a 6-year program to build capability and capacity for Māori researchers, our Māori scientists, and also our traditional knowledge holders and practitioners. Our name Kanapu was gifted to us by Emeritus Professor Ngā Huia Te Awa Kōtuku. She is also one of the ruanuku for Ngā Pae o Te Māramatanga, and we're really grateful to have her gracious gift of Kanapu, which she characterises in the following way. Kanapu as a light bulb moment, also as lightning. Kanapu to help us think courageously. Kanapu to help us do the things that our tupuna, our ancestors, had paved the pathway for. It's our opportunity to do these things. Kanapu has its own inherent whakapapa, and it is descended through our creation narratives. I'm well aware that a lot of our inherent whakapapa have a tātai tāne, and so I just wanted to also ensure our audience today that we have done a depth of insight into Kanapu and the whakapapa. We think of hine te uira, we think of hine te kapua, we also think of hine ihorangi. We are part of Ngā Pae o Te Māramatanga, and very pleased to be sharing some of our mahi today. Lastly, we're based at Waikato University, and we have partnered with AATEA Solutions. Some of the whānau you'll see shortly through some of my slides. We have 4 pillars in Kanapu. Hiko Hiko Te Uira speaks to connections that are organic and unscripted yet filled with potential. Papa Te Whatitiri, retention. What are some of the things that we can do through our program to ensure our whānau can stay in their places, at place, to be able to do their projects? I Kanapu ki te rangi speaks to acceleration into the realms of leadership. What are the aspirations that our whānau have, our families, their communities, to stay in their spaces, but to be leading the projects on their own terms, to be leading out the aspirations of those that have gone before them. And finally, haruru ana te ao, which speaks to the reverberation. And I'm feeling quite the reverberation being here today. It's wonderful. We have a small team based here at Waikato University, myself, Professor Tahu Kukutai, who is also the co-director, one of the co-directors at Ngā Pae o Te Māramatanga, alongside Waimaria Linda Nikora and Ahiri Hapi. We have partners with AATEA Solutions, who were established in 2000. They have over 23 years of business working in community spaces and also have deep whakapapa across the motu. So it makes sense for us to partner with an organisation like AATEA, Hinerangi, Kiwa, and some of the whānau here you see on the screen. So speaking to He Kura no Te Ao Atua, Recoded careers through Atua knowledge systems. This mahi would not have been possible without our partner AATEA Solutions, e mihi ana kia koutou, and specifically to Whare Kupenga Keith, for her deep aroha, thought and care that has been brought to fruition in this taonga. Nei rā te mihi ki a koe, Whare, I know you're on today. I have seen you popping up from time to time, but we are deeply grateful for the care that you have shown throughout this piece of mahi. He Kura no Te Ao Atua was launched on the 1st of May at Hui Hihiri 2024, which is our national online wānanga. This is our first opportunity to share this work publicly, so it's very fitting that we share it with our sisters, our sisterhood across the globe in the Pacific. Kia ora. This karakia was developed for Ue Matarau and for He Kura no Te Ao Atua. It speaks to the opportunity to create a culturally respectful space for those engaging in He Kura no Te Ao Atua. I would love to recite it, but in the interest of time, I will just leave it here for us to appreciate. But similarly, we also like to close with karakia once we have been sharing and having kōrero with this particular taonga resource. So as an Indigenous Atua framework, how did it come about? Our initial approach was last year. We hosted Hui Hihiri. We had over 400 attendees from across Aotearoa, New Zealand, who entrusted us with their information. Not any information, any old information, information about who they are, where they're from, their hapu, their iwi, sub-tribe, iwi, tribal connections, affiliations, and also the types of mahi that they're doing in their communities. Our early goal was to develop a heat map of activity through a Māori worldview to be able to sit alongside New Zealand's research, science and innovation ecosystem, which has a very much Western sciences orientation. And it also has a research classification system where a lot of Indigenous work falls within one number series. And so for those from Australia, they'll be familiar with this. For our Indigenous people, First Nations, and Indigenous Aotearoa, we sit in the 45,000 number series. We wanted to change it up and make sure that whatever we did reflects the types of mahi our people are doing in their communities. We also wanted to positively demonstrate the visible mahi that people are doing versus the invisible work that often we don't see because it's not funded, therefore it's not counted. And finally, we wanted to develop an evidence base that is for Māori, by Māori and for Māori. As we got into the work, it was more than simply mapping activities. it became obvious that we needed to develop a deeper relationship with the many Atua essences because of the types of mahi and work that people were doing in their communities and across Aotearoa, New Zealand. We understand that there are some strength-based, inherited strengths that people have. And so we identified numerous Atua who have a deep connection as well. To guide our work, we established a rangawānanga with mātanga or experts to bring their deep knowledge to bear. And I would just like to acknowledge those individuals. Whaia Taina Boasadine, Whaia Hema Wihongi, Waimaria Linda Nekora, Kiwa Hammond, Whare Kupinga Keith, Hinerangi Edwards, Emeritus Professor Ngahoia Te Awa Potuku, Kakahurimu Paiko, Tukarotu Mahuta, and Te Taruna Pārangi. As we got into the work, one of the quotes from Hema from our hui hihiri last year was trying to express the Māori worldview, or not trying to, but expressing our Māori worldview. We always start with io. Io begins everything. The environment in Mātauranga Māori is the Atua, and the Atua are the environment. And as we look at the different Atua essences and domains that we explored through this work, we identified that there is commonality of moving through time and space from te kore to te pō to te ao marama. We also recognised that in the Atua spaces, it's not binary. And what I mean by that is, while we have a universality in our Māori creation and narratives with Ranginui, Sky Father, and Papa Tuanuku, our Earth Mother, when our Atua essences would interact with one another, there actually was a lot of fluidity, and we wanted to ensure that that fluidity came through in our work as well. So to make sure we were honouring Te Ao Māori and our Māori worldview, our project and our process has been informed by tikanga Māori. It acknowledges multifaceted and complex relationships in whakapapa, brings forward whakapapa narratives available in the public domain, and makes them within reach of those who are starting in their own journeys, but at the same time creates an honest spaces for tribal, sub-tribal, or family knowledges and their own narratives. And finally, the orientation of our work was to look at it in a way that makes sense to us as Māori. So through the 400 plus data sets that we gathered, we were able to identify predominantly 8 Atua that a lot of the whānau, our practitioners, our scientists, and our researchers are working in. We also went one step further to ensure that we had the couplings where relevant. And when I say couplings, we're looking at both the male essence and also the female essence. As I said earlier, while these things aren't necessarily binary, some of these Atua had multiple couplings, and we wanted to ensure that we were creating enough or putting enough information in front of people to be able to connect with the information in a meaningful way. So this is an example of one of the Atua charts that we have developed. This is for Tāwhiri Mātea and Parawera Nui. Tāwhiri Mātea being our Atua for winds, and from which Kanapu is derived. On the left, we can see the Atua kōrero, which is taken predominantly from public spaces, and so there's a few breadcrumbs in there for people to follow. And on the right-hand side, we can see the different types of work pathways that people who are sitting in these Atua spaces have started to progress in terms of careers. And on this slide here, this is the build of all of the Atua charts that have been developed. And it does two things. On the first hand, it shows the relationships between the different spaces. But what it also does is show the fusions. And I think it's really important for us to understand through our own worldview as Māori that with relationships, they bring obligations, they bring responsibilities, and they bring duties. And so what sits in here also the fusions, if you like. So between some of the different domains, there are fusion roles that have actually been created. And we heard from Kitty earlier, and I'd like to think, Kitty, you can see yourself in our tangaroa and te anu mātau spaces that we have here. So finally, here at Kura no te ao Atua, as an Indigenous Atua framework for research, we are hopeful it has multiple uses. One is it creates a standing ground for our Indigenous ways of thinking and how our work that happens at place, while people may not use language like research, science, and innovation, they can see themselves in this because we have transformed it from the narrow Western definitions to something that is more translatable to our worldview, our way of knowing, being, and doing. Secondly, it provides a reflection and an affirmation of the spaces we occupy, and I would like to say that we have always occupied. And thirdly, we hope that this will also have potential uses in kura. If we think about our schools and our primary schools, kura kaupapa Māori, bringing forward atua to be within reach of our tamariki and mokopuna, our future generations. And in our secondary schools, wharekura, being able to connect to the inherited strengths and possible pathways, we hope that this koha will be able to be used by them also. And so in closing, our karakia to end for this particular section, unuhia, unuhia, unuhia I te urutapu nui, kia wātea, kia māmatinga kau, te tinana, te wairua I te arotakatū. Koiara e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia wātea, pai rā, kua wātea. Hau pai mai riri.
Hau pai marire ki a tātou. Nisa tēnā rawa atu koe o tō whāriki I ngā kōrero. He kōrero huki huki. It is a work that is continuing to be developed, and just acknowledge your leadership within Kanapu as well. E te mārei kura. E te whānau, we can share a link to the mahi for those of you who are online with us, and we hope that there is utility for the spaces that you operate in the kōrero that brings our tupuna and our atua within reach, as Vanessa said.